Hey guys, welcome back. In this session, we will be looking into the most frequently asked questions on security concepts. My name is Anand Guru, and I'm here to help you clear the next cybersecurity job interview. So let's start. So one of the most important question that will be asked in almost all the security interviews is what is CIA? CIA stands for Confidentiality, Integrity, and Availability, also known as the CIA Triad. It is a model designed to guide policies for information security within an organization. The elements of the triad, that is, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, are considered the three most crucial components of security. Now, let's try to define each of these. Confidentiality means that only the authorized individuals should be able to view the sensitive or classified information. The data being sent over the network should not be accessed by unauthorized individuals. We can achieve confidentiality by using encryption and access control. Integrity is all about ensuring the data is not modified either in transit or at storage. We can achieve integrity through hashing. Availability is to make sure that the system and the data is readily available to its legitimate users. We can achieve availability by redundancy, backups, and load balancers. Moving on, there will be questions on encryptions like what is encryption and explain the different types of encryption. Encryption is a process of encoding information in such a way that only authorized parties can understand it. Encryption is done using keys called as encryption keys. There are two types of encryption. One is symmetric encryption, in which the same key is used for encryption and decryption. Examples of these type of encryption include Blowfish, AES, RC4, RC5, and RC6. Asymmetric encryption is a second type of encryption in which different keys are used for encryption and decryption. Examples include RSA, DSA, PKCS. Explain asymmetric encryption. In asymmetric encryption, different keys are used for encryption and decryption, typically known as private key and public key, also referred to as key pair. Any data encrypted with public key can only be decrypted by the corresponding private key. Let's look into the example as to how this public key and the private key works together. A server keeps a key pair, that is private key and the public key. The public key is issued to all the users who request a connection. At the user's end, the application encrypts the data using the server provided public key. Once the encrypted message reaches the server decrypts the message using its private key. This is asymmetric encryption. That is, the information encrypted by the public key can only be decrypted by the private key. Here, the private key is never shared with anybody, and therefore the information is secure. What is hashing? Hashing is the transformation of strings of characters into a fixed length value or key that represents the original string. In this case, if you see, we have taken the string of characters, that is A, B, C, D, E, converted that into a hash, and we get a fixed length string. Hashing is one way, that is, it is not possible to get the data back from the hash value. Hashing is used to ensure the integrity of the data. Examples of hashing include MD5, which generates 32-bit hexadecimal characters, SHA1, which generates 40 decimal characters, hexadecimal characters, and SHA256, which generates 64 hexadecimal characters. SHA stands for Secure Hashing Algorithm. Explain difference between encryption and hashing. Encryption is a process of encoding information in such a way that only authorized parties can understand it, whereas hashing is transformation of strings of characters into a fixed length value that represents the original string. Encryption is two-way, that is, we can get the data back by using decryption, whereas hashing is one way. We cannot get the data back from the hash value. Encryption will ensure that there is confidentiality of the data, and hashing ensures the integrity of the data. Algorithms for encryption include AES, DES, and Bluefish, whereas for hashing we have MD5, SHA-1, and SHA-256. One of the most favorite interview questions asked in almost all the interviews is, what is vulnerability, risk, threat, and exploit? Vulnerability is basically weakness or gap in a security program that can be exploited by threats to gain unauthorized access to an asset. Risk is the potential for loss, damage, or destruction of an asset as a result of a threat exploiting a vulnerability. Threat: anything that can exploit a vulnerability intentionally or accidentally and obtain damage or destroy an asset is called as a threat. Exploit is a tool or a mechanism used to take advantage of the vulnerability. Explain defense in depth. Defense in depth is an approach to cybersecurity in which a series of defensive mechanisms are layered in order to protect valuable data and information. If one mechanism fails, others step up immediately to thwart an attack. This multi-layered approach with intentional redundancies increases the security of a system as a whole and addresses many different attack vectors. Here is an example of defense in depth. First of all, we have a layer of policies and procedures, followed by physical security, then network perimeter security. We have internal network security, host level security, application level security, and finally data level security. What is system hardening? System hardening is a process of securing a system by reducing its attack surface. Few things on system hardening checklists include changing the default user credentials, closing up unused ports, stopping all unused services, install updates and patches, implement correct access control, install antivirus and keep the signatures up to date. What is Zero Trust model? Zero Trust security is an IT security model that requires strict identity verification for every person and device trying to access resources on a private network, regardless of whether they are sitting within or outside of the network perimeter. Few principles of Zero Trust models are: assume that there are attackers on both sides, that is, inside and outside of the network. Should implement the concept of least privilege and use multi-factor authentication whenever possible. Explain Kerberos. Kerberos is a computer network authentication protocol that works on the basis of tickets to allow systems to prove their identity to one another in a secure manner. So in order to request a ticket from the in the Kerberized environment, these are the steps. And when the computer wants to request for a services, it does so by following these steps. I will not be reading them. Please take a look at the steps involved in Kerberos authentication. Next question is, if budget is not a concern, how do you secure a web server? Now this is a question that will emphasis on making sure that you understand security in 360 degrees. So we need to cover each and every aspect of security implementations here. So let's look at how do we secure a web server, right? So first of all, we'll go with network security by implementing anti-DDoS technology, firewall, IPS, and web application firewall. We also protect the web server with host security with technologies like antivirus, host intrusion prevention system, host firewall, and application control. Also, apart from these preventive technologies, we should implement system hardening and also enable log monitoring on the web server. Finally, the web application itself should be thoroughly tested by application penetration testing methods. What do you understand by compliance in cybersecurity? A compliance framework is a structured set of guidelines that details an organization's process for maintaining its security. There are industry specific compliance like PCI DSS to protect credit card data, followed by banks and e commerce sites, HIPAA to protect patients' health information, usually followed by hospitals and insurance companies, SOX needs to be followed by all the public listed companies, GDPR should be followed by European companies. There will be questions on different types of hackers and their motivation. So here are few of the different types of hackers. White hat hackers are the authorized hackers who work for the government and organization by performing penetration testing and identifying loopholes in their security. So these are the good guys who identify the weakness and report it to the companies. Black hat hackers are the hackers who hack for malicious intentions, for example, financial gains. Then comes gray hat hackers, which fall somewhere in the category between white hat and black hat. They are not legally authorized hackers, they work with both good and bad intentions. They use their skills for personal gains also. Script kiddies. A script kiddie is an unskilled person who uses scripts to download tools available for hacking provided by other hackers. Hacktivists is a group of hackers who gain unauthorized access to government's computer files and network to further a social or a political agenda. State or nation sponsored hackers. These are the hackers who are appointed by government to provide them cybersecurity and to gain confidential information from other countries to stay at the top or to avoid any kind of danger to the country. Then there is malicious insider or whistleblower. These are the employees of a company or a government agency who gains access or knowledge of an inside operations which he speculates to be illegal and threatens to go public. One of the very famous whistleblower of our generation is Edward Snowden. There will still be some random questions like, if you had to both compress and encrypt data during a transmission, which would you do first? So it should always be compressed first to reduce the size and then encrypt. Encryption on more data will take longer time, therefore compression is the first thing to do. Between TLS and SSL, which is more secure? TLS is more secure. SSL is an older version of, or not older version, but like predecessor of TLS. What is zero day? A vulnerability or a malware that has been identified but doesn't have a fix. It is the time period between a vulnerability or a malware being identified and the release of patch or a signature. What is the difference between vulnerability assessment and penetration testing? Vulnerability assessment is a process of identifying the vulnerabilities in a system or network, whereas penetration testing is to identify the weakness and also go one step ahead in terms of exploiting the identified vulnerability as well, of course with authorized permissions from the target company. So this is about the the security concepts. We will meet again in the next session. Thank you.